Happy Friday. As you see by the thumbnail, it's another resin project this week. These are actually pieces from processing burls, rough turning. So, I always cut them off with a bandsaw, and then I've got these burl pieces laying around that unfortunately in the past have been mostly firewood. Just didn't have anything that I could do with them. But now that I'm doing resin, I certainly can. So yeah, I just want to make them the same size as the bucket. And of course, removing all the bark. It's important as well. I like to use a flat tip screwdriver. It doesn't dig in as badly when you're getting rid of this bark. A little brass brush that goes in my drill. Does a good job cleaning up the rest of it. Mixing up the resin. Again, going with the designer epoxy. So this is a glow-in-the-dark pigment nuclear green. And they wanted, when I was talking to designer epoxy, they said 1 gram per ounce. So that's what I mixed it up as. And I'm just applying it to all the surfaces. So yeah, this will do a couple of things. It'll seal the burls up so that we don't get any bubbles rising through the resin, and hopefully it will make them glow as well. And I mixed up a little bit too much, so then I just threw it in these silicone molds. Yeah, so it's the next day. The finishes, or sorry, the epoxy isn't totally cured on the burl pieces, so that's good. And I'm using hot melt glue to hold them down in place in the bottom of the bucket. That way they don't float. And that's just a little spacer block to just take up some space within the casting itself. Yeah, so mixing up some resin here. Again, it's a 2-to-1 ratio, A to B. So that's 48 ounces. It's probably going to take more than that, but I figured I'd start there first. Yeah, so I want to try the emerald green, and I'm just going to tint it enough just to give it a greenish color. I don't want to make this kind of a solid color. So again, this is all unknown to me. So I'm just gonna, I said I'd get a proper measuring device, but well, I didn't. And we'll start with that. See what that looks like. So as you can see, I'm going with the pearl again. There, I think I like that. So anyway, I'll pour this in the bucket and see if it's enough or if I need to mix more. But I fully anticipate mixing more. I guess that's one of the great things about this this epoxy, or this resin, is it has a really long open time. So, I'm not in a huge panic to get this measured out, get it in the pressure pot. Another 48 ounces it is. Here's another 48. There, that's a good level of resin. Hopefully nothing floats other than that. I'll get something to put on. I'll put something on that to keep it down. Well, my rock fell over. Oh, good, it's not stuck to the resin, so that's good. I think we got it. Let's take it out. Okay, so now if you recall, I didn't put any resin release agent in here. That's partly because I was trying to stick them so they wouldn't move around. So I don't know what this is going to be like to get out. Could be another marathon session. This was a brand new bucket, and what I did was I cut it down so it would fit in the pressure pot, and then I put the handle back on it so that it's easy to get in and out. It was also suggested not to use a metal hammer on this getting it out, so this is a rubber hammer. Well, hey, that was easier. Let's see what we got. Oh, crap. You ain't gonna slide out past these. It's not really that big of a deal to take this off. I'll just put it back on afterwards. I just find when I'm trying to set this down in the pressure pot, it's quite slippery, and I really like the fact that I could pull it out with the handle. Now, last week, that was an old bucket, and I'm assuming that's probably why it's stuck so bad, even with the mold release. Well, air pockets. That's all right. I mean, I'm going to be turning that away anyway, so that's not a real huge deal. There, I'll grind the rest of that off. And I know, I hear you. This is an old chisel, and I know I shouldn't be using metal on metal. And you're like, how come you haven't got a turned mallet? It's on the list of things to make. Can't wait to turn this. Actually, these are not air pockets. This is the hot melt glue that I use to hold these in place. I forgot about that. So yeah, here I am lining it up between centers, just trying to balance it out. Again, I'm going back with the 5/8 David Ellsworth gouge. I just love this gouge. And oddly enough, this time around, it seemed to be cutting the resin better, and I think that's probably because the resin wasn't as hard as it was last time. Last time I was getting a lot of fracturing. This time it was coming off in nice streams, so it was actually kind of a joy to turn compared to the resin last week. Anyway, I'm just trying to get down past the resin and into the wood and then see what we have. Push cuts, pull cuts. Trying to define the bottom now. Yeah, big difference between last week's resin and this week. And I think what it is, it sat an extra 2 days in the heat before I used it last week. And that's probably why it wasn't so hard this week, because I used it literally 36 hours after it was ready. And again, that's the Easy Wood Finisher, which is doing a really good job of eliminating any tear out. Now, if you've never turned resin, it is staticky, and I had so many issues with it sticking to the camera and sticking to me. I had to stop all the time to get the resin off of the camera. very staticky. Yeah, just cleaning off what's going to be the top side of the bowl. I wanted to get things as balanced as possible before I went on to the next stage. So I decided to use my hot melt glue waste block method. So I kind of made a custom size one, a little larger than normal. Probably wasn't needed, but I decided to do it anyway. Cutting grooves in there for extra place for the hot melt glue to sit. And as long as you get it lined up perfectly, you won't have too much cleanup on the other end. It was out of balance a little bit, but it wasn't really that big of a deal. Back with the finisher. Shear scraping again. I talked about that last week with the resin. Yeah, so this is only my second resin bowl, and I mean, it's not even a full resin piece. But my observation so far is that the way that the last two bowls that I made anyway, I've used the 5/8 bowl gouge as basically the roughing gouge, and then switched to the Easy Wood finisher to get just that really nice fine cut with that carbide cutter that's on it. And yeah, if you're a turner and you haven't turned this stuff, it certainly is a little harder to turn than normal wood. This is maple burl, and it's hard maple burl, so it's not very fun to turn anyway. But with the resin, it certainly complicates it even more. Yeah, it's just working my way into the bowl here. That spacer that I put in there, that's now all turned away and gone. Little pull cut, just trying to use up all the edges on the gouge. And this is Burl anyway, so it's not uncommon to use scrapers for on burls anyway. And essentially, when you do a pull cut like that, that's what you're doing. It's a scraping cut. Again, constantly cleaning off the camera. Here I am with the finisher. Just gentle cuts, and if you go really easy with it, it'll do a really good job. If you're too aggressive with it, though, it's not going to be good. Okay, so last week, first of all, what do you think of that? That's pretty darn cool, I think. Anyway, last week when I did my first resin bowl, I had to fill a few spots here in the resin, but you know what? There's literally nothing to fill in the resin itself. The burl does have some little holes, and what I'm going to do is hit it with the Starbond Thin. And again, there's a link in the description for 10% off your next order. And of course, I'll be using the accelerator so that we can move around this and get it done. So yeah, I mean, pretty solid burl. And again, if you haven't turned much burl, or even if you're, you're not a wood turner or a woodworker and you follow my channel just to watch me make things, burls, it's very common for burls to have voids in them. And this here is actually hard maple burl, so it is actually very hard. It's like turning concrete, it's so hard sometimes. Anyway, I'll just go around, fill in any of these little holes, put this back on the lathe, true it up, and then we'll start sanding it. There we go. All done. And again, I just can't get over how impressed I am with this resin, how there's no bubbles in it. Yes, so back on the lathe using the finisher again, just cleaning up any glue residue that's left over from filling any voids. I just find it's best to do this before you move to sandpaper. Okay, on to sanding, starting with 60 grit. And I filled a couple more spots here on the bowl, so I'm just kind of cleaning off that CA glue before I actually start sanding. And I'm using 3.5-inch dimple discs from sandpaper.ca. And each grit I alternate the direction of the lathe and direction of the drill, and it'll give you a really good surface. Backside, I'm using my right angle air powered sander. I couldn't get the drill in there to do that, so this is a good tool for that. Yeah, so here I'm inspecting my work, and I'm reasonably happy with the results I'm getting. A little bit of swirl marks in there, but it's still we're still at very low grits here. Yeah, so I'm just progressing through the grits here until I get to 400. Use the Minwax sanding sealer. I did order the myelin stuff, but it's not going to be in time. So this will have to do. So yeah, hopefully after lunch this will be good to go. I don't want it on too heavy. And anyway, hopefully that will give the wood some protection before we wet sand. Okay, so what I'm going to use, this is actually 600. So I'm going to start sanding, wet sanding, and I realize that this isn't, a wet dry sandpaper, but it'll work. Having a bit of issues down here in the transition area. Like back here. And I just found when I was trying to dry sand that it just wasn't working for me. I was leaving all kinds of scratches behind. Having a hard time holding on to sandpaper too. And I was actually going to make some OB Shine juice, but it's sold out just about everywhere. I do have a 4-pound cut of really old shellac, and I did mix it up, but instead of being, you know, yellowy or maybe even a little orangey, it's actually brown. So I don't think it's any good. Yeah, my intention is to go to 1,000 here. I think I'm going to go back to the wood bowl finish. The response last week to my first resin bowl has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for helping me out with that. A lot of people seem to think that it was my sanding, that there were still streaks kind of in the resin, and that's why it was showing through the wood bowl finish. So you know what? I'm going to go back to it and let's see what happens this time. I will make sure that this is good and dry before I put any other finish on this. And of course, if this was just a big block of resin, well, hey, I'd have no problems wet sanding the whole thing and then putting a finish over it. But with the wood, of course, it's an issue. Might even try putting this on my drill and going slow. What do you think? Think we should try that? Getting there. Let's try this. Let's check it out. You're like, oh no, we ruined it. I can see some swirl marks in there. It's not bad. I can still see some though. Go back to hand sanding. And yeah, I know that typically you're going to wet sand wood and resin, you know, when you've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 coats of shellac on it or something like that. But I'm hoping this will work too. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Yeah, I did order some Yorkshire grit abrasive paste, but again, it's not here yet. So, you know, once I had done 1,000, then I'd probably do the abrasive paste and then move on to finishing. I'll just try and use a rag here to warm this up. Some of the moisture out of the wood. I certainly can't see anything on the wood. And so, you know, if I put that wood bowl finish on there and I get that streaking again, you know, if it doesn't streak on the wood and it only streaks on the resin, then I'm going to say that it's an issue with the finish and the resin. Regardless, I think it's going to be good. Yeah, just for insurance sake, I figured I'd get out my heat gun and heat the surface of the bowl. Of course, being careful not to get too close to the resin. I don't know if it would do anything to it, but I wasn't going to take any chances. Okay, we're going with the wood bowl finish. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I can see the wood's going to need more than one coat, that's for sure. Well, that looks pretty darn clear. Look at that. I am happy with that. Now let's just hope that that finish doesn't go all streaky. Okay, so here's where we're at. Now, if you watched my video last week, I really complained about these streaks in here. And you know, last week was a lot worse than it is today. So that tells me that in all likelihood, it's my, my surface prep. That's probably what it is. So I'm kind of at a crossroads. I don't know if I should go with 4-0 steel wool to smooth this out before I put the next coat on, or do I maybe use 800 or 1000 grit sandpaper before the next coat. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't got that figured out yet. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is just go with 2000. You can get this at sandpaper.ca as well. There'll be a link in the description below for 10% off. So I'm not going to use any lubricant. I'm just going to do it dry, and hopefully it's good. Okay, so with the 2000 grit sandpaper, it's very hard to get the sheet paper down in this transition area. This is a tough transition area for sanding. So, you know, it was leaving a lot of rough behind. So I used 4-0 steel wool and it cleaned up nicely. If I was using that 2000 grit sandpaper wet, it certainly would probably give me a better result. But you know what? I'm happy with that. I think when the next coat of finish goes on there, hopefully we won't be seeing any streaking at all. Okay, so my curiosity is getting the better of me. This is a beeswax mineral oil combination that I make, and I'm actually going to put it on the surface here and put some inside of 4-0 steel wool and see what kind of a finish that gives me. So that's what I'm doing here now, if you're wondering. So the plan is I'll do this, and then I'll wipe it off clean. And before I put the next coat of finish on, I'll make sure I use denatured alcohol to strip off any of the wax or the mineral oil that's left on the surface. In theory, that is. Looks pretty darn good to me. We just might have our new way of finishing things. I don't know, maybe people are already doing this. Okay, so I went back and did the inside with the 4-0 steel wool and my beeswax mineral oil combo. This is another coat of the wood bowl finish by General Finishes. Well, again, it looks perfect. So what I did actually last night was I put another coat just on the wood alone to seal it, so that we could hopefully be done this today. Well, it sure is clear, even with the little bits of pearl. I love it. I did find a bubble. See it there? I never noticed it until I had the finish on it. But anyway, that's okay. As far as I'm concerned, that's still a win. Okay, so the finish is cured. I'm happy with what I've got, but you know what? Overall, it's a lot better than it was last week. So this was suggested by one of my subscribers, JP. So I'm going to give this a go. The instructions are actually kind of vague on it, really. Anyway, I'll just put it on with a brush and then wipe off the excess, and then I'll turn up the lathe speed and see what happens. It's definitely smoother, that's for sure. Silky smooth now. This is not going to be used for food, so I don't really care if it's a food safe finish or not that goes on here, if you're wondering. Anyway, let's get this cut off and get the bottom done so we can finish this video up. Yeah, so if you're new to my videos, what I'm using here to finish the bottom of the bowl is a vacuum chuck. It's made by One Way Manufacturing. And you know what, if you do any amount of bowls, I highly recommend getting one. It's not cheap. I don't even know what they cost now. This one here is probably about 9 years old, but well worth the money to get. Fast. Again, sanding from 180 to 800. Just a little bit of hand sanding to finish it off. And this bowl will get 2 coats of finish on the very bottom of it. All right, let's do a final talk about it. Well, that's it. We're all done. I just got one more coat of finish to go on the very bottom of this, and then I'm sure my wife will claim this. Again, this is maple burl with nuclear green pigment, glow-in-the-dark pigment, and then emerald green with some pearl in it in designer epoxy. If I think about it, I'll put the links down. I'll put it in the links down below. So the idea with this was I was going to paint on that glow-in-the-dark pigment, and it would illuminate all around here and then make the whole bowl itself glow. Didn't work. I took it into a room here that's dark, and there's nothing. Ironically, the only spot that actually is working, there's one air pocket in there, and it's right in there. Hopefully you can see that right here. So the pigment is below that air bubble, and it must be so close to the surface that it's getting enough to work. Anyway, it's not what I was going for. Still, this is a fantastic bowl. And I'll do this again next time. Maybe the smart thing to do is just to put it in the resin. I just didn't want this huge glowing mass. So I could probably tone that down like I can with the amount of pigment that I put in the resin. So anyway, we'll come back to this one day. Still, I think this is an absolutely fantastic bowl, especially for my second one. Again, these are burl cutoffs from normal burl processing that I have. And unfortunately, I really didn't have any way of saving these pieces. I'm not in the business of making blanks. I need to get on with production. So, you know, I've only got so much space to store so much wood. So unfortunately, a lot of these are firewood. So now in the future, I'll be certainly holding on to the majority of the really nice ones. And then maybe I'll make a few bowls of this. And so speaking of this, is this a commercially viable thing? It'd be tough. I'll be honest with you that a bowl like this, and this is 9 by 3.5, I would have to charge at least $400 for. And that's Canadian, of course. And, you know, possibly even more than that. There's probably 3 times the work in this than there is in a normal bowl. And then on top of that, the resin, of course, is expensive as well. So it's kind of one of those things. I'll get better and I'll get faster as I do them. So, you know, maybe it is a doable thing. We'll have to see. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed that. And you know, a lot of this, the reason why this works so much better this week is because of my subscribers. There's a lot of great comments come in about what I should try and not do and all that stuff. And that was great. Thank you so much. That 4-wheel steel wool and the beeswax and mineral oil combination that I used after the 2000 grit worked great, and I'm going to revisit that. Again, I don't know if anybody else is doing that, and it just kind of shows you a glimpse into my brain that, you know, I'm always trying to try something to make it better, make it faster, make it better. And I just thought I'd give it a try, and really there's no harm in trying that. Worst in case, I'd have to just sand it off and redo it all again. So it's not that big of a deal. Just make sure that you remove any wax before you put any finish over top. That's all. So yeah, thank you so much for that. And again, our 15,000 subscriber giveaway bowl, walnut with copper pipe and mussel shells. Once I hit 15,000 subscribers, I'll mail this off worldwide after we draw a name. And the other thing too that I wanted to ask you, do you guys want me to do a shop tour? Do you want a question and answer video? I get a ton of questions. The main one being, why does the picture look backwards? And of course, if you're right-handed, it would look backwards to you. I'm left-handed, and I work on the outboard end of my lathe on left-hand threads. So that's why it looks that way. I get asked that all the time. So anyway, if you want me to do a question and answer thing on anything, well, turning related to my channel, no problem there. I can do a shop tour. Just let me know in the comments down below if you want to do that. And along with that, in the description, don't forget about the links to Starbond, sandpaper.ca, and all the other links for products that I use here in the shop. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. For me, it's a whole new avenue of ideas and thinking, and you know, the natural inlays to me still are fantastic, and that's been the bulk of my business over the years. This opens up just a whole other aspect of that, and maybe I'll be able to combine the two of them. You know, who knows where it's going to go. But anyway, and I haven't even thought about next week's project because I've been trying to get this done in other production work. So, but anyway, come back next week. I'm sure I'll try and do something nice for you anyway. But until then, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you next week. And don't forget that bell, you know, when I put up a new video. See ya.